Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the infinite Creator. I communicate now. Questioner. We are a little concerned about the physical condition of the instrument. She has a slight congestion. If you can tell me of the suitability of this session at all, I would appreciate it. Ra. I am Ra. This instrument's vital energies of the physical complex are low. The session will be appropriately shortened. Questioner. She requests that if it is possible for you to cause the instrument's vehicle to cough at intervals, that would help her, if it is possible. Ra. I am Ra. Please restate query, specifying interval. Questioner. She requests that you cause the instrument to cough about at least after each communication. Is that possible? Ra. I am Ra. This is possible. Cough. Questioner. Thank you. The way I intend to continue with the book is to follow on through the last 25,000 years cycle that we're in now, and possibly investigate a little of fourth density conditions, and thereby find many places that we can go back and delve further into the law of one. The first material I expect to be not too deep with respect to the law of one. I hope to get into greater philosophical areas of the law of one in more advanced sessions so that we make the material progress so that it will be understandable. I hope that I'm following the right direction in this. In the last session you mentioned that in this last 25,000 years cycle the Atlanteans, Egyptians, and those in South America were contacted, and then the Confederation departed. I understand that the Confederation did not come back for some time. Could you tell me of the reasons, consequences, and attitudes with respect to the next contact with those here on planet Earth? Ra. I am Ra. In the case of the Atlanteans, enlargements upon the information given resulted in those activities distorted towards bellicosity which resulted in the final second Atlantean catastrophe 10,821 of your years in the past, as you measure time. Many were displaced due to societal actions both upon Atlantis and upon those areas of what you would call North African deserts to which some Atlanteans had gone after the first conflict. Earth changes continue due to these, what you would call, nuclear bombs, and other crystal weapons, sinking the last great land masses approximately 9,600 of your years ago. In the Egyptian and the South American experiments results, though not as widely devastating, were as far from the original intention of the Confederation. It was clear not only us, but also to the Council and the Guardians, that our methods were not appropriate for this particular sphere. Our attitude thus was one of caution, observation, and continuing attempts to creatively discover methods whereby contact from our entities could be of service with the least distortion, and above all with the least possibility of becoming perversions or antitheses of our intentions in sharing information. Questioner. Could you have the instrument cough, please? Ra. Cough. Questioner. Thank you. Then I assume the Confederation stayed away from Earth for a period of time. What condition created the next contact the Confederation made? Ra. I am Ra. In approximately 3,600 of your years in the past, as you measure time, there was an influx of those of the Orion group, as you call them. Due to the increasing negative influences upon thinking and acting distortions, they were able to begin working with those whose impression from olden times, as you may say, was that they were special and different. An entity of the Confederation, many thousands of your years in the past, the one you may call Yahweh, had, by genetic cloning, set up these particular biases among these peoples who had come gradually to dwell in the vicinity of Egypt, as well as in many other places, by dispersion, after the down-sinking of the landmass Mu. Here the Orion group found fertile soil in which to plant the seeds of negativity, these seeds, as always, being those of the elite, the different, those who manipulate or enslave others. The one known as Yahweh felt a great responsibility to these entities. However, the Orion group had been able to impress upon the peoples the name Yahweh as the one responsible for this elitism. Yahweh then was able to take what you would call stock of its vibratory patterns, and became, in effect, a more eloquently effective sound vibration complex. In this complex the old Yahweh, now unnamed, but meaning he comes, began to send positively oriented philosophy. This was approximately, in your past, of 2 we correct this instrument 3,300 years. Thus, the intense portion of what has become known as Armageddon was joined. Questioner. Would you create another cough, please? Ra. Cough. Questioner. I have a question about how the Orion group got in 3,600 years ago. How did they get through the quarantine? Was that a random window effect? Ra. I am Ra. At that time this was not entirely so, as there was a proper calling for this information. When there is a mixed calling, the window effect is much more put into motion by the ways of the densities. The quarantine in this case was, shall we say, not patrolled so closely, due to the lack of strong polarity, the windows thus needing to be very weak in order for penetration. As your harvest approaches, those forces of what you would call light work according to their call. The ones of Orion have the working only according to their call. This calling is in actuality not nearly as great. Thus, due to the way of empowering our squares, there is much resistance to penetration. Yet free will must be maintained, and those desiring negatively oriented information, as you would call it, must then be satisfied by those moving through by the window effect. Cough. Questioner. Then Yahweh, in an attempt to correct what he saw as what I might call a mistake, I know you don't want to call it that, started 3,300 years ago a positive philosophy. Were both the Orion and Yahweh philosophies impressed telepathically, or were there other techniques used? Ra. I am Ra. There were two other techniques used. One by the entity no longer called Yahweh, who still felt that if it could raise up entities which were superior to the negative forces, that these superior entities could spread the law of one. Thus this entity, Yud-Heh-Shin-Vav-Heh, came among your people in form according to incarnate being and made it in the normal reproductive manner of your physical complexes, thus birthing a generation of much larger beings, these beings called Anak. The other method used to greater effect later in the scenario, as you would call it, was the thought form such, as we often use among your peoples, to suggest the mysterious or the sublime. You may be familiar with some of these appearances.